Hello, everybody. Welcome to our latest edition of the Filibuster, Premium Cigar Association's Government Affairs Update. I'm Joshua Habersky, our Executive Director. I'm joined by Glenn Loop, our Head of State Government Affairs, and Rob Burgess, who is our new Government Affairs Consultant. Really excited to welcome Rob and Ryan Parada, who all of you are very familiar with, to our team. So we'll be working with them on both federal and state advocacy. Rob's background is obviously a combination of advocacy, government affairs, as well as political campaigns. So I thought it was very appropriate to have him on the show to talk a little bit about the election outcome and what does this really mean for the premium cigar industry. I know that we've had some conversations, Rob, but I'll posit that question to you before I go to Glenn.
No, I think that with Donald Trump's mandate that was given to him last week, Premium Cigar Association and the industry as a whole is really going to probably see a lot of benefit come from this election. We now see Republicans in control of both chambers in Congress. We're going to start seeing an overhaul when it comes to the people Donald Trump puts into place at these executive agencies that have a lot of regulatory authority over the industry. And so I think we'll see a lot of the things that we were frustrated with over the course of the last 4 years get rolled back or start moving away. And then we'll have a lot more allies to work with on the legislative side of things federally as well. And we can start chipping away at that long list of goals that the industry has to start moving forward on.
Yeah, and you mentioned some positives from this. Obviously, I think on the small business side and the tax cuts, preserving those, I think that that's an area where we will be on the offensive, making sure that those tax cuts and small business deductions are preserved for our retail and manufacturer membership. I think on the concerning front, something as we kind of wade through and we build relationships and kind of go back and talk to some of the existing relationships, tariffs, that's been a topic of discussion and for the past few weeks. What are your thoughts on tariffs as it relates to premium cigars and accessories?
Well, I think ultimately, when you're looking at the tariff question, it's going to come down to one of three things, right? It's going to come down to a production value. How much does it take to create the good, and should that amount be tariffed as it comes into the country? The perceived retail value of a good, should that be tariffed, or the combination of the two? Ultimately, I think that we're in a very strong position as an industry that we can probably prevent the overall retail side from really necessarily being affected by a tariff on the individual stick or the importation of cigars directly. We do need to probably work together on trying to find a way to either lessen or reduce entirely those tariffs on the accessories, because that's a lot of what will probably be targeted as it's coming in from the Far East, China specifically. Some of it's now being made in places like Taiwan, Vietnam. That helps, but specifically anything that is being landed from China is probably going to be at the top of the tariff list. Anything that from Central America is probably going to be lower on that list for us to take into consideration.
That's helpful information. I think spot on. The accessories is kind of where the conversations are heading in that direction. Obviously, some key appointments have been or key announcements that will await confirmation or the nomination process have been already announced. But I think we're waiting for bated breath on what is going to happen at HHS. Also, Dr. Califf in a recent interview said he most likely won't be staying on board. So that will be a new FDA commissioner that we'll have to, obviously build relationships with and discuss. But also in some of the other areas, I think the other point where we have the most to weigh in on and make sure that we're very active is monitoring international relations, specifically in Latin America. Marco Rubio announced as Secretary of State. Obviously that's something that will come up. Fortunately, Senator Rubio has been a champion for the premium cigar industry, obviously being a longstanding senator from Florida. We've met with his office several times in that capacity, but understanding, the relations with some of the countries in Latin America with the United States and hoping that the free flow of goods and people can continue. Glenn, we'll pivot a little bit to you on the state side, and Rob, feel free to interject there. What happened with the elections in the states? Anything strike you as an indicator of what we can expect?
I can literally say nothing's changed. I mean, it's really odd. It's kind of almost refreshing to be over here on the state side of the equation predominantly. And I was just looking at in an article that our friends at the National Conference of State Legislatures submitted, that really, this type of historic perspective is always fascinating to me, but that over the course of the last 125 years, the country has averaged 8 to 9 party shifts in the state legislatures per cycle, 8 to 9 over 125 years, and that it's been amazingly consistent with no more than 5 to 7 flips since 2012. But on election day, this is just more for anecdotal discussion, and then I want to just go through a bullet point collection of the state issues that we know of that could be influenced by the current power structure in the states. One, no governors have changed for the first time since 2000. No changes in governor's office for the first time since 2000. 23 state legislatures are controlled by Republicans at both the legislative level and in the governor's office. 15 states, the Democrats control the legislature and the governor's office, and only 12 states have divided governments whatsoever. That's a lot of consistency for our line of work, for our business, for the looking out after the premium cigar industry. So very quickly, I just want to run through the state issues while we've got this opportunity that we know of right now, sort of the crystal ball look at things. On the tax front, Georgia, Maine, Michigan, Virginia, New York, New Jersey, Wyoming, Colorado, and Illinois, either in the form of tax increases or tax cap legislation. Cigar bar legislation in Maryland, Ohio, Maryland, Ohio, Wisconsin, and New York. Generational smoking bans, new movement in Hawaii, and then the proverbial concern in Massachusetts. Local authority legislation in Michigan, North Carolina, Colorado. Flavor ban legislation in terms of bans anticipated again in over a dozen states. So I just wanted to correlate the issues with the states with the election outcome to say basically we know what we're dealing with. And it's going to be a sort of a rerun of what we anticipated and what we experienced in 2024. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, given that there were no tax increases in 24 or for the last 3-4 years, and no tobacco flavor ban bills passed in over a dozen states this past year. We would hope to have the same outcome again. So it's a matter of moving the ball down the court on the things that would benefit us most, which is cigar bar legislation and tax caps. So with that, I think that it's good to have a state of consistency in our state capitals.
Yeah, and that, obviously with those breakdowns, that emphasizes our need for bipartisan engagement and in government affairs. We ran our PAC reports, and we've had a 98% winning percentage of candidates that are pro-cigar through our political action committee. And, that includes both Republicans and Democrats, something that, this cycle or over the past 2 years, we did a combination of contributions, but also in-kind contributions, meaning cigars. So hosting cigar events where the product is front and center. And that's something that we plan on working hard on the political action front into the new year to kind of replenish the war chest, so to speak, so that we can continue to support candidates. We are also going to, at the state level, have our state grant program for state associations. So state associations can apply for that grant to receive supplemental assistance for their lobbying and advocacy for state level lobbyists that will obviously work with Glenn and their state association leadership. One of the things I want to ask, Rob and Glenn, because of the consistency in the states and some of the things that we've seen in the past few years, and then this, changeover in a trifecta for Republicans at the federal level, do you see it as a possibility that the anti-tobacco interests kind of move down the pendulum and we start to see more state activities in certain states and even in the localities because they're unable to get things done federally, whether it be in Congress or the agencies?
You want to take that first, Rob, or you want me?
Sure, Glenn. I would say I agree with that ultimately. When you start hitting roadblocks at the federal level, anti-tobacco, anti-cigar legislation that might have initially gotten legs here in DC are going to look for other avenues, right? And so that's when you start going and looking at, the state or the locality level. I think ultimately, though, that the report Glenn just gave us shows us that they're going to also have trouble hitting that as well, because when there's no changes in any type of state makeup, those speed bumps remain the same, right? And so ultimately, I think where you're going to start seeing a lot more things happen is they're going to start looking at the court system. They're going to start looking at the judicial system and saying, okay, we weren't able to legislate this. Can we find a sympathetic judge that's willing to create rule from the bench? And we might end up having to see a couple court cases pop up when it comes to another flavor ban, right? But ultimately, I think we're okay when it comes to legislation out of DC, and ultimately, I think that we'll be okay in a vast majority of states. I can't imagine a flavor ban passing here in the next 2 years with the way there's been no changes at the state level. Can you, Glenn?
No, and I wrote an article several years ago that said that state capitals and city halls were the incubators of tobacco control legislation and ordinances. And I've got living proof right here in front of me, and everybody knows how I feel about show and tell. This is show and tell time. This is a flavor ban proposal that was submitted to the Kansas City, Missouri City Council. It advanced through committee, went to city council, and sent back to committee. This ordinance is so strict, it's as if the entire healthcare lobby showed up at City Hall and wrote this bill with the city attorney's office. And this was submitted by the city attorney's office. So I don't mind saying that publicly. What tobacco control cannot accomplish in Washington, they certainly moved down to the city hall and state capitol level. So whereas we haven't seen the regulation to ban flavored tobacco products advance at the federal level, the same exact dozen states that had the bill in 24, I think that will be back in 25. And for example, the one in Vermont made it all the way through the legislature, and if it weren't for a governor's veto, it would have advanced there. And he did it in a spirit of individual choice, which is the right approach to take. So if it can happen in Vermont, it can happen in Oregon, it can happen in New York, it can happen in any number of states that I can think of out of the dozen that's had such legislation submitted in 2024. So it's about making the case, and where our side of the industry has to be ever more concerned about this is the broadness by which these laws are written. You get into the subject of flavored descriptors and the hints of nutmeg and notes of cinnamon. Well, we know there's not nutmeg and cinnamon in a premium handmade cigar, but that doesn't mean you can't experience it. Just because there hints of nutmeg in wine, we know there's no nutmeg in wine. These descriptors are a frightening part of this proposition, and it also brings into play the role of premium pipe tobacco and retailers being compelled to change the name of a product simply because it sounds flavored, not because it is flavored. And that's the reason we have to be very mindful of legislation that impacts other tobacco products and other parts of the industry sectors that are not a part of the portfolio of products that are primarily focused by the Premium Cigar Association. And I don't mind saying it here, but we oftentimes get dragged in it. It's going to happen about 2 o'clock in Michigan at a hearing where we get dragged into legislation that's principally meant to affect the vape and e-cigarette market. Now, I'm a libertarian by by personal choice, and I don't think anybody ought to be affected. And everybody's grown ups, and everybody can make their own choices. But when premium pipe tobacco and premium handmade cigars get dragged into fights that are not ours per se, that's when our industry has to wake up, and that's when our industry coalitions and our retail network have to come to the defense of our industry at every city hall and state capitol in the country.
And
Yeah.
Glenn, to that point, I think that you brought something up specifically, is that city halls are the incubator here, right? And our retailers can rely on their customers to help make sure that the way this affects our industry is shared back to the city hall, right? These city councilors are very in tune to what their constituents want. And we all know how valuable that cigar customer is. That retailer relies on that customer to come in every day or every week and continue to stock up. It's okay to say, hey, did you know that the city council is considering a flavor ban? Did you know the city council is considering this that would specifically affect our cigars in this store? If you're just as upset about this as I am, here, please sign this petition, or hey, please give your city councilor a call and tell them that you don't appreciate it. The more advocacy, Glenn, to your point exactly, the more advocacy that we're able to generate at that grassroots level, it makes our job here at the higher levels even easier. And so I strongly encourage the retailers to be keeping an eye out and be monitoring all of the updates from Glenn and Josh.
Well, real quickly, and that's the very reason we're a part of a broad coalition to run a strong ground game to stop these generational smoking bans in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And you can go to cigaraction.org to fill out your petition. It goes to the city halls, goes to your members of the state legislature to oppose these generational smoking bans. It says if you're born after January of 2007, you can never, ever, ever buy a premium cigar or tobacco product. So that's an incredibly significant step. This is a part of the ground game that we're going to be running in 2025 on any given piece of legislation. But real quickly, to go back to the bipartisan nature of all this, it's a Democrat in Colorado supporting a tax ceiling bill just because he believes in our industry. Senator Tom Sullivan, I had an opportunity to have a cigar with him during the Rocky Mountain Cigar Festival. We can't pigeonhole legislators by Democrat and Republican DNR beside their name. We've got strong allies in both parties, and that's true from the United States Congress to Colorado State Capitol to you name it, to city halls across the country. And that's an incredibly significant part of this discussion that we don't alienate anybody.
Oh,
We need as many friends as we can get in this industry, and PCA specifically has taken great strides into building those types of bipartisan coalitions.
And Glenn, I want to talk a little bit about Florida. I know that we were concerned of the potential of the expansion of smoking bans in Florida, kind of tied to the cannabis legislation or the referendum, then subsequent legislation. Can you give us a status update on that?
Well, the cannabis referendum failed.
mm-hmm.
So, but due to that failure, we don't know, and we're going to prepare accordingly because we don't know. The state senator from Sarasota had promised legislation to ban any form of outdoor smoking if the cannabis referendum were to pass. Well, it didn't. But we also know that senator has not been happy with the exemptions that premium handmade cigars and pipes got during the last round of granting local governments the authority to ban smoking on public beaches and parks, for example. So we're going to prepare accordingly, and that means we're going to advance the communication that we sent to the retail community before the election to form a Florida Premium Cigar Association, so that in the event anything comes up in Tallahassee, our retail network will be prepared to respond accordingly. Basically, I don't trust the environment. I mean, even as strong as our industry is in Florida with corporate headquarters and an amazing retail community and a strong base of consumers, I simply don't trust the political environment enough to say we're out of the woods. So we're going to prepare accordingly.
And that same can be true in Pennsylvania, where we were dealing with the expansion of indoor smoking restrictions, that go around. Pennsylvania obviously being another stronghold for the premium cigar sector. Pennsylvania and Florida, the two states with some of the most retailers in them. It's concerning that we have to be vigilant everywhere, even in those strongholds. I think, as we go into the new year and even the subsequent months, we're kind of operating under a do no harm strategy. Congress and the FDA in particular, hopefully it will freeze existing rulemaking that they had intended. The other thing that I think is important to note in the current political atmosphere, this is in a post-Chevron world. So some of the things that the agencies may have been able to get away with, they have to pass another check of meeting those new standards for the courts. So we're in a good position there. I think in the coming months, we are going to have some large scale events at our office to educate newly elected members of Congress. And our team will be doing education meetings, whether we're sending, one-pager communications about what is a premium cigar and the basics to newly elected officials, or, Rob and I going around the Capitol and meeting in those individual offices of newly elected folks. We typically in a new Congress will do about 200 meetings. So 200 touch points are important for us. And we maintain that in this off cycle of having over 100 congressional meetings. So we're not stopping or slowing down at any point just because we feel like, we've had some wins. Now it's take some proactive action. Let's see if we can, get some small business relief for our membership from some of the most draconian regulations at all levels of government, and see if we can work on some positive things. Cigar bars, the sale of spirits along with cigars is not permitted in every state. We believe, and it's a tenet of the Premium Cigar Association, that if you want to open up a premium cigar establishment for persons 21 and over, you should be able to do that, and it should be a seamless process that you go through, and really limit the barriers on starting those new businesses, whether it includes a lounge or whether it includes the sale of spirits or, just a regular shop, grab and go shop. We want to make sure that we continue to maintain a robust membership that we have. Any final thoughts, gentlemen? I have one closing thing that I'll wrap things up on, but I want to give you the last word.
Go ahead, Rob.
I would say, we're excited to be partnering with PCA here moving forward for the next year, and working closely with Josh and Glenn, as well as all of our fantastic members and retailers. Ultimately, I think that we are in a good environment right now for premium cigars. I think we're in a good environment to work together and start moving forward. But most importantly, I encourage you to go to cigaraction.org, make sure that you're engaged there, and help make sure that we are set up to have strong advocacy moving forward, so that Glenn has the ammunition that he needs at the state level to help make sure that our industry is not under siege. So,
couldn't agree more. Just pay attention, cigaraction.org, and I think we can anticipate probably 20 to 35 pieces of legislation. And the important part about remembering and where we are in this process is that even though these state capitals didn't change hands in the governor's office and House and Senate across the country, we have to remember that all the bad bills and all the good bills that we experienced in 23-24 have to be refiled in January.
mm-hmm.
So it's almost like starting with a clean slate. That means Josh and I and our whole team get to peruse probably 5,000 pieces, and I'm not making that number up, about 5,000 pieces of legislation, and chisel it down to several hundred of real concern, and chisel that several hundred down to about 50 to 75 bills nationally that I can anticipate us having some level of concern, either good, bad, or indifferent. again, we have to watch out for the things we get dragged into versus the things we walk into. So it's just the nuance of the political process, but it's a new day in the neighborhood across the country. And that's why PCA is on the job for you.
Mhm.
Thanks, Glenn. Thanks, Rob. Just a parting thought that I wanted to mention, kind of outside of the government affairs orbit, but also, significantly connected. The association has made two major actions in the last few weeks. The expansion of membership to include the PCA Alliance. We're rolling out new benefits for Alliance members. This is really tailored towards businesses that are connected to retail tobacconists. Cigar shops or wholesalers that sell to golf courses and distilleries, breweries, wineries, gun clubs, barber shops, restaurants, getting them involved, getting them the information that they need, and also supporting from a financial standpoint, the advocacy fight. They have a vested financial interest in the industry. The other one is the consumer side. Now, that consumer side is definitely also geared towards business owners. Our price point is $99 for that. For the small businesses, it's $250, and comes with a slew of initial benefits, and we're expanding those benefits. We announced our partnership with the Cigar Academy, which has provided discounts for those members, as well as our existing retail members. We are growing member benefits for all categories. And there's a lot of excitement around that. But for the consumer membership, those are people that also have a vested financial interest. If you're a lawyer or an accountant or a swag maker that is connected with the premium tobacco lounge or shop, we want you to get involved with the Alliance. The second big announcement, go ahead, Glenn.
I'm sorry. I couldn't let this opportunity slip up. We want to commend our PCA members who got reelected to their state legislatures.
Mhm.
How many times do we get to say that?
That's a
But
big deal.
Tom Kessler in the Kansas legislature, Patrick Lucas in the West Virginia legislature, and Todd Johnson in the North Carolina legislature. It's just a fabulous, wonderful, growing trend, and we've had others that sought office, and we wish them well in pursuing those seats in the future. And our friend, the new senator from Iowa, also got elected, and so it's just a nice growing phenomenon that we've got PCA members getting elected.
Yeah, Mike Pike from Iowa. Real excited for that. That's a new pickup, and obviously another state where we can look to do some positive things from. Kind of going back to that other piece, the major announcement yesterday. The World Cigar Show Dubai. Exciting opportunity for the association to look outward at the international level. It's a strategic partnership with a company called Quartz. They host a variety of different shows around the world. Currently host a show in Dubai. And, we are bringing to the table our advisory experience. We hired Shannon on our team, Shannon Marie, to bolster our trade show team, to assist Lisa Cox. We're going to be making a slew of announcements about the trade show in the next few weeks, the New Orleans trade show. But this partnership is important. We're seeing a lot of growth in international membership of retailers, suppliers, manufacturers. And, the Middle East and Asia are emerging markets. Quartz this is a Quartz event where we are a strategic partner. We will assist them with getting exhibitors to participate in the show, marketing, and advising on some of the logistics of a premium cigar specific show. So that this is an exciting new initiative for the association. I think between now and the new year, we will also be launching our brand new updated website. I know Antoine and the communications team have been doing a phenomenal job across the board in growing our reach, growing our communications platforms. the almanac. He's been working steadily on that. So we have a lot of positive things going on at PCA that are not only limited to government affairs. Government affairs is obviously a critical component of the organization, but from a membership development, communications, and events side, we're also seeing growth. 2025, and my hope in coming on for my first full year officially as executive director. We got a lot done with the board. We were able to deliver actions for our membership, and we now need to work on some of that implementation and fine tune things. But I've been hearing from a lot of folks of the general excitement within the industry. As always, if you have questions or comments, feel free to reach out directly to any of our team or in feedback as well. Some of this is very new, and will present some challenges for the association, but also a ton of opportunities. We're willing to take the risk, and I don't think anyone can question the level of output and activity of the Premium Cigar Association, which I think everyone on our team takes great pride in. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll probably do one more of these government affairs updates before the new year. But if we don't see you before Thanksgiving, have a happy Thanksgiving and a good time with your friends and family. And hopefully you get to enjoy a couple cigars over the holiday time. Thank you.